the FIA has tightened its regulations on rear wing flexibility after concerns arose following the Australian Grand Prix. Their recent findings suggest that some teams may have been pushing the limits of the rules, prompting stricter tests for the upcoming races. This development could significantly impact the competitive landscape, especially with Red Bull already hinting at potential advantages. It's now clear why Red Bull remained confident about closing the gap to McLaren. With circuits like China and Japan likely to pose challenges for McLaren, the question is, will these new regulations be enough to disrupt the current order? Or will the MCL 39 continue to dominate the grid? One of the biggest talking points of the 2024 season has been the rear wing deflection issue. Just when it seemed like the FIA had found a concrete solution, fresh concerns surfaced in Melbourne. Reports indicate that officials were not satisfied with what they observed in some teams' cars, particularly regarding small openings that reduced drag. This led to the decision to introduce stricter testing procedures for the next two races. During practice sessions in Australia, teams were required to install cameras to monitor car deformations. After reviewing the footage, the FIA determined that there was enough evidence to warrant tougher scrutiny of the upper rear wing. Consequently, new testing methods will be implemented in Shanghai, ensuring that any flexing beyond the allowed limits is eliminated. Though all cars at Suzuka were deemed legal, the FIA's decision suggests that significant changes might be on the horizon. The new regulation states that the distance between the main plane and the flap, commonly referred to as the slot gap, must not vary by more than 0.5 mm from Shanghai onward. However, due to the short turnaround time between races, an additional 0.25 mm tolerance will be allowed specifically for Shanghai before the full 0.5 mm limit is enforced from Suzuka. This stricter regulation could lead to notable performance shifts among teams, especially those that may have relied on rear-wing flexibility for aerodynamic advantages. The official FIA statement released after the Australian GP confirmed their findings, detailing the necessity for this immediate change. The FIA's official communication outlined the specifics of the new test. According to Article 3.15.117.20, if a 75 kg vertical load is applied to either end of the rear wing's main plane, the gap between the main plane and the flap must not exceed a 2 mm variation. However, for the Chinese Grand Prix, this limit has been significantly reduced to just 0.5 mm. Due to the short notice, an additional tolerance of 0.25 mm will be permitted in Shanghai, but beyond that, the stricter limit will be enforced without exceptions. Teams were informed of these changes on March 17, just a day after the Australian Grand Prix. The timing of this decision is crucial, as it indicates that the FIA gathered substantial evidence suggesting that some teams were benefiting from excessive flexibility in the rear wing. Despite all cars passing inspections in Melbourne, the FIA still found enough grounds to impose these tougher restrictions. Red Bull's vocal stance on this issue now seems justified. Their technical director, Pierre Wash, had hinted at possible rule-bending by rivals, particularly McLaren and Ferrari, during pre-season testing in Bahrain. His comments were initially met with skepticism, but with the FIA's latest intervention, his concerns appear to have been valid all along. These adjustments could significantly impact performance, especially for teams that may have relied on this flexibility to gain an aerodynamic advantage. The reduction in rear-wing movement means that cars will generate more drag, potentially affecting straight-line speed and overall race pace. However, there's another crucial factor at play: the Shanghai International Circuit itself. The upcoming race presents a different set of challenges compared to Australia, with a layout that includes a long back straight and high-speed corners. This means teams with superior aerodynamic efficiency will have an edge, but those affected by the new rear-wing regulations may struggle. With these restrictions coming into effect so early in the season, the competitive order could see a shakeup. Red Bull has been adamant that certain teams were exploiting loopholes, and if their suspicions are correct, the performance gap could narrow considerably. With these rule changes coming into play, all eyes will be on how teams adapt to the new restrictions. The biggest question now is whether McLaren and Ferrari will suffer a noticeable dip in performance. Given how vocal Red Bull has been about this issue, it's likely they anticipated this move from the FIA and have already accounted for it in their car design. If that's the case, their chances of regaining dominance could improve significantly. Ferrari, in particular, has been under scrutiny after their impressive preseason testing runs, where they seem to gain an advantage from what Red Bull described as a mini DRS effect. Now, with stricter regulations limiting rear-wing movement, their true performance level will be tested. Will they maintain their pace, or was some of their advantage tied to the now banned flexing? Interestingly, while the focus is currently on the rear wing, there's growing speculation that the FIA could also introduce similar measures for front wing flexibility. Teams have already been required to place cameras on their front wings to monitor flexing in both high-speed and low-speed corners. Initially, the FIA planned to wait until the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona before implementing front-wing checks. But with the swift action taken against rear-wing flexing, an earlier decision regarding the front wing could be on the horizon. If these stricter regulations continue, we could witness a drastic change in the competitive balance. While teams like McLaren and Ferrari might struggle to adjust, others, such as Mercedes, who have been looking for a way back into the fight, might find themselves in a much stronger position. China's cooler temperatures could also play a role, as tire management will be a key factor in determining which teams benefit the most from these new restrictions. At the heart of all this, Helmut Marko and Red Bull's technical team are likely feeling vindicated. They had previously warned about rivals taking advantage of flexible Aero components, and now, with the FIA stepping in, their concerns seem well-founded. Back when Marko claimed that the gap between the MCL39 and the RB21 would shrink under stricter rules, many dismissed his comments as exaggeration. But now, with these new guidelines in place, we're about to find out if he was right all along. One of the biggest unknowns heading into the Chinese Grand Prix is just how much these new rear-wing restrictions will impact performance. While some teams may have already prepared for such a change, others who were relying on flexible aerodynamics could face serious challenges. The concern for McLaren and Ferrari is that if their advantage was built on exploiting these loopholes, they might suddenly find themselves struggling to keep up with Red Bull. Another key factor is tire degradation. Throughout the season, Red Bull has demonstrated superior tire management, an area where McLaren has notably struggled. Even if McLaren maintains a competitive pace in qualifying, their long-run performance could suffer if they are unable to manage tire temperatures as effectively as Red Bull. Verstappen himself highlighted this issue after Australia, admitting that despite Red Bull's struggles in passing McLaren, the real difference came in how the two cars handled tire wear. This could become even more evident in Shanghai, where the track layout demands a balanced approach between high speed, straights, and technical corners. If McLaren loses aerodynamic efficiency due to the new rear-wing regulations while also battling tire wear, Red Bull could capitalize on these weaknesses and close the performance gap. Ferrari, too, will be under pressure to prove that their early season pace wasn't overly reliant on rear-wing flexibility. At the same time, Mercedes may see this as an opportunity to regain lost ground. The team has been searching for a breakthrough. After a difficult start to the season, and with the FIA cracking down on flexing components, the competitive order could shift. If Mercedes' car design remains unaffected by these changes, they might finally have a chance to fight at the front. With all these developments unfolding, the next few races will be crucial in determining whether Red Bull's push for stricter regulations was justified. If McLaren and Ferrari maintain their pace despite the new rules, it would suggest their performance gains were legitimate. But if they struggle, it will confirm Red Bull's suspicions that some teams had been benefiting from a flexible rear-wing design that is no longer allowed. While the immediate focus is on the rear wing, the FIA's crackdown on flexible components could extend further as the season progresses. With onboard cameras now closely monitoring front wing movement, there's growing speculation that the governing body might implement stricter regulations on that aspect as well. If teams have been pushing the limits with flexible front wings, similar to their rear wing designs, we could see another wave of performance adjustments. For now, the changes to rear wing flexibility will be the first real test. If McLaren and Ferrari's pace drops significantly in China and Japan, it will confirm that they were gaining a competitive edge through subtle aero adjustments. On the other hand, if their performance remains strong, it could indicate that Red Bull may have overestimated the impact of these flexible components. Meanwhile, Mercedes will be looking to capitalize on any disruptions caused by the new regulations. The Shanghai circuit could be a crucial turning point for them, as the cooler temperatures and long straights might allow them to regain some lost ground. If their car remains stable under the new FIA guidelines, while others struggle to adjust, they could finally re-enter the battle at the front. Additionally, the new regulations could force teams to reconsider their setups moving forward. With a reduced tolerance for wing flex, engineers will have to find new ways to optimize aerodynamics without exceeding the limits set by the FIA. This could lead to major shifts in car development strategies as teams adapt to the stricter enforcement of the rules. As the season unfolds, one thing is certain. The FIA has made it clear that they will not tolerate teams exploiting gray areas in the regulations. With Red Bull leading the charge and pushing for stricter tests, it's no. With the FIA tightening regulations so early in the season, the upcoming races will be a real test of which teams were truly ahead on merit and which may have been benefiting from aerodynamic flexing. Red Bull has made it clear that they believe these changes will bring the field closer together, but only time will tell if that prediction comes true. McLaren and Ferrari now have the added pressure of proving that their recent success wasn't dependent on loopholes in the regulations. If they can maintain their pace despite the new restrictions, it will confirm that their performance gains were genuine. However, if they struggle, it will validate Red Bull's concerns that flexible aerodynamics played a major role in the early season. Pecking order. Beyond the rear wing issue, teams also need to be wary of potential further clampdowns. The FIA has already been monitoring front wing flexibility, and if similar restrictions are enforced, it could shake up the grid once again. With this level of scrutiny, teams will have to be extremely cautious with how they approach aerodynamic development moving forward. As the championship battle continues to unfold, one thing is certain. This season is shaping up to be one of the most unpredictable in recent memory. Whether Red Bull regains dominance, McLaren and Ferrari maintain their edge, or Mercedes finds a way back into contention, the next few races will reveal just how much of an impact these new regulations will have. So, what do you think? Has the FIA made the right decision by tightening the rear wing regulations? And which team do you believe will be affected the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on the latest F1 drama, don't forget to check out our other videos.